Many folks have asked me to review and talk about the issue of purchasing land in the village. I must admit that I don't know everything about buying land in the village. I've been involved in a couple of transactions, and so there's a chance that everything I'm going to tell you today is probably not complete. It's just based on my limited experience buying land here and there. And so, for those of you who are well experienced in issues land, I highly encourage you to help us fill in any gaps and maybe correct cases where we misspeak. So, anyway, good morning, folks. As you can see, today we are filming from Kisumu City. For those of you who've never been to Kisumu, this is downtown Kisumu. Usually we film from the village in Karateng, and Karateng is part of the larger Kisumu County. And today I just came to town to pick up a few things, and so I'm just filming as I drive around town. Now, Kisumu is like I say, about 20. Kisumu CBD is about 20 minutes from Karateng, and it's one city in Kenya that is famous for cleanliness. You will hardly find trash, at least within CBD. It's also famous for many other things that I think we will review on a different video. So let's get right to our topic, which is land purchase in the village 101. There are multiple steps that are involved if you're looking to buy land in the village. So step number one, find land. There are many ways to go about it, and there's always land in the village, rest assured. But what I typically recommend is that you can either purchase land or find land through connections or through reputable companies. I have a few companies in mind which I will not highlight today because they are not paying me yet to advertise them. But yes, there are some good companies that have a good reputation with finding people good land. But also just through personal connections, like in my case, if you need land in Karateng, I've got folks that have helped us over the years. We just send feelers and they'll find land somewhere. So number two, after finding land, then you do what we call a land search, which is a local version of a background check, where after getting a copy of the title deed from whoever is selling, then you go through the Ministry of Lands to just get a sense of what's up with the land. Oftentimes, the search will tell you whether the document you are receiving is legit. It'll tell you whether there are any rates that are still owed, if there are claims to that land in terms of caveats. Maybe there's an attachment to that title. And so basically this gives you some measure of background on that particular land. It's not perfect, but it's a good start and is recommended for all land purchases. Then the next step is you get a survey map. And again, at this stage, I'm hoping you're using both a qualified surveyor and a lawyer. So the surveyor should help you find a good map that gives you a sense of what the boundaries of the land should be. And it's always very cheap. You can purchase a copy of the map by yourself, and then you go with the surveyor to see whether the map actually matches what's on the ground. In the village, one common thing that you'll find is that people tend to push boundaries because many lands are not fenced. So it's likely that the map that you have may not reflect exactly what's on the ground. So you want to verify that before you proceed. If there are issues, you want to ask and get clarification, because you don't want to get to a situation where you have to start fighting neighbors. We live in Karateng and we have the exact same scenario with our ancestral land, where the neighbor took nearly half of our land and then the other pieces all over the place. And so, you want to be clear that the boundaries on the ground matches the boundaries on the map before proceeding. Now, assuming all that checks out, the next step to do is to make sure that whoever you're talking to has consent, or you've received consent from everybody who needs to consent before that land is sold. In the village, one of the more common issues you're going to run into, especially with ancestral land, is that a lot of lands are still held, or at least on the title still is held by a person higher up, like a grandparent or a great-grandparent. And so when you have grandkids selling land whose title still lists their grandfather, then there may be many people involved that you need to get consult from. And there may be cases where one piece of land has been sold to more than one person. Because a lot of these ancestral lands, there's verbal agreements as to who owns what, but that's not always on paper. So you want to make sure that the consent part is really addressed. Otherwise, You'll give money and then you start dealing with massive problems. Now, once the consent part is cleared, everything seems okay, you've checked out with whoever needs to be involved, then you get to the stage where you sign a sale agreement. Of course, this is your lawyer, who I hope is recommended. Don't just go with random lawyers, and I'll tell you why. Your lawyer prepares a legally binding document, which should protect the seller and the buyer and ensure that each party benefits from the sale as appropriate. So this sale agreement includes many things, including the buyer and seller details, land description, cost of the land, and payment timelines. And most importantly, who pays for what during the process. Because besides just the cost of land, there are some other costs involved in here, like paying for the lawyer, the stamp duty, and things like that. So you want to be clear in writing as to who is paying what. And then, of course, you have to spell what a breach of contract would look like. So what happens if either party breaches contract? So then whatever happens, there's an agreement as to how you proceed. Sometimes I've seen people do quote unquote offline agreements, especially around the cost, where, say, for example, the land costs about $1 million, and then on paper you agree that you and the seller are going to write $500,000 for the purposes of taxes. Now, clearly this is not legal, but people do this so that they pay less stamp duty, because stamp duty is a tax that you give to government. In the city, I think it's about 4%. In the village, it's probably about 2%. And so when you quote a lower value, then you pay less money. People get away with it, but you can also get in trouble, because if the other party breaches contract that was offline, then things can fall apart. But people do that. The other thing to watch out for in the village with this agreement is that lawyers will tell you one thing at the beginning of the process, and they will keep adding costs. By the end of the process, you'll end up paying more than twice what the lawyer originally told you they are going to charge you. So this is one reason why I tell you, don't just go with random lawyers, because they know how to really take advantage of folks that are new. And then once all that is done, the agreement is signed, then of course the payment part. This can be nerve-wracking, because you're giving somebody money for land that you don't already have. But typically you pay, and then once the payment is done, then the seller prepares the transfer agreements. That's done. And of course, this is your lawyer really involved, and hopefully all that is done. Then you get your title deed. Now that is sort of like a summarized version of what the process looks like. Now, here are some things you want to keep an eye on, again, specifically when it comes to buying land in the village. Number one, with ancestral land, make sure you're talking to people who have legitimate claims. I've seen folks sell land, and then it turns out they are not even allowed to sell the land, or then you have a neighbor who has claims. So ancestral land can be challenging with things like that. If you're a woman, there may be challenges that are very specific to women. For example, women, sometimes they go to land boards and then they ask, hey, where's your husband? Or just basically a woman walking, navigating land issues on her own can still run into problems that I've covered in other videos. So keep an eye on that. And then I often recommend, if you're not in a hurry, try purchasing land during rainy season. You'll get a sense of what really happens when it rains. The village, for the most part, almost every land that I've seen is freehold. Because in Kenya, you have either lease or freehold. Most lands in the village are freehold, meaning you buy it, you're not paying taxes, you're not paying any rates on it, it's yours. And then, of course, number two, you want to pay attention to the topography of your land, especially if you plan on building on it. Some of the lands that people buy without really visiting, which is a very bad idea, often have issues with topography. For example, you get a land that is sold that is really high up on the hill. Now, those places are really beautiful to build in, but they come with some serious costs in terms of land preparation. So if you don't mind building in very steep hills, that's fine. But you want to know what that looks like in real place, which means please go and visit. Don't purchase something you've not visited, or at least make sure somebody you trust has gone and seen exactly what you're purchasing. Now, the other thing to keep an eye on is the utilities that are either on the land or close by. Looking at water lines, power lines, sewer systems, if there's any. Because sometimes getting electricity can be quite a challenge, even if the power lines are close, because sometimes the power folks will tell you, hey, given where you are, you'll need an extra transformer, which is a completely different animal. So you want to get a sense of what the utilities are. or the activities that people are doing with utilities around your land. Let me give you an example. Recently, two of our neighbors decided to actually get into our land, dig through it, and put a water line running right across our land from one piece of land to another. They didn't even care to call, even to talk to us. I mean, it's really annoying because I could simply go in and cut the pipe and then throw it out there. And so it's one issue I'm yet to resolve. Sometimes people just feel they have the right to just pass utility lines in your land without your consent. So get a sense as to how that is, especially in the village. Besides the utilities, you want to make sure that, again, your land is either not on the riparian land, or if it is, it suits what you want to do with the land. By riparian, I mean lands that are close to, I believe, rivers or lakes. Because the reality is, it's actually a safety issue if you build a structure on a riparian land. Because what always happens is that during rainy season, the water will definitely come back and wipe out whatever you planted there. But if you're buying land for agricultural purposes, then you're good. If you're buying something you're going to build in, just make sure you've got enough space between the river. And I could be wrong on this, I think it's about 100 meters from the river. You're able to build after 100 meters. But anybody who knows what that is can clarify. So riparian lands can be tricky in terms of building structures. And also keep in mind, it's actually illegal to build a structure within riparian land. So you want to make sure that is covered before you buy and use your land. The next thing to keep an eye on is the issue of access. What kind of roads do you have? And I'm talking about both legitimate roads and the other roads we call kojolo. And legitimate roads are just roads that are recognized on the maps. And the kojolo roads are roads that people just created by just walking around. In the village, sometimes people create these roads on people's land, and then the new buyer finds themselves with land that has a road that runs through their property. And the day you want to fence your land, then the village folks will start fighting you because you're blocking, quote unquote, a road which does not exist on a map. So get a sense of how those roads move, and also their sizes too. Right now, the problem we're dealing with is the road leading to our home is about 6 meters. Yet on the ground, it's about 3 meters. Now that we want to expand it, the neighbors, at least one neighbor, is going nuts thinking that we are taking their land, yet they're the ones who are actually using the road. So you want to get a sense of what the access roads look like and their sizes, so you're not fighting your neighbors making that work. Also, avoid being conned. There are a million and ways to be conned, whether it's fake land, buying already sold land, government land, overpriced land, incorrect dimensions, bait and switch, where they actually get you to buy one land and then tell you, oh, no, let's move you to a different one. So watch out for that. So before you open your wallet, watch out for the 1,000,001 ways that you can be conned. Well, I hope that was useful, and I will see you in the next. Thank you.